and thank you for tuning in. In this video I've documented my per usual chaotic process of hand stitching an entire mid-Victorian gown. Okay, so I have 5 meters of this fabric and it is 135 centimeters wide. So I was planning on just making squares and thus just drawing it out on the fabric and then just see whatever is left and use that for the skirt. But it might be smart to actually draw out what you're going to draw before you do it, right? I'm gonna be a good individual and actually draw out what I'm going to do. Ooh. Okay, so I've done the math and I don't actually have enough fabric for what I was thinking, because I was hoping that I could line the bodice in this fabric because it's very thin, and I've learned that a thin linen doesn't have the quality of linen. It won't be sturdy enough for the type of bodice that I want. When I bought the fabric I wasn't planning on actually lining the bodice, so I don't have enough for that, but I have more than enough if I keep it unlined. So I think what I'm going to do is bring in a second fabric. I'm sure I have something. So these are both a linen cotton mix. This fabric is a linen viscose mix, so it's a bit thinner than these two. So I don't know, we have basically my skin color or this one, which it actually looks good. I have 1 meter of this and I have 2 of this. Which one looks best on camera? They look the same on camera. I'm gonna use the brown one because I have more of this one and I think it looks slightly better. It's closer to diarrhea than a lot of other nice looking browns, so I would rather make something in the pink one than in the diarrhea brown one. We have a plan. Also, this is what my plan looks like. Good, isn't it? The irony that I said I didn't really like this color when I'm basically already wearing it. It's not entirely lost on me. More is there. You know what, I'm not gonna bother. It's fine, it's fine. That was a terrible way of... Oh god, that's uneven. Okay. I have now refolded the fabric so that I can save this part and use it for something else, because I'm very good at saving fabric. Don't look at that, look at this. Perfect. So I don't actually know what to do with these yet, so I'm just gonna put them aside for now. Even though my plan looks completely waterproof, am I in frame now? No, I'm not. Oh, no. Even though my plan looks completely waterproof, I'm a bit afraid that I'm not going to have enough fabric left for the skirt. I'm afraid that it's going to be a bit too short because I need as much fabric as possible for the skirt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear out those pieces first because I want to tear the fabric. And whatever's left going to be used for the sleeves. Then I simply measured my skirt length and tore the fabric. I would recommend cutting and not tearing in case it's an uneven weave, but this is way faster and more fun. Lastly, I made the sleeve pieces. That's almost exactly what I needed. That's terrifying. Should I just like to left, I can speak. Okay, so I still need cuffs and a waistband for this, and the under the armpit piece. That should be more than enough. So now, oh, that's painful. Sorry. Ugh. I don't have the patience. Let me get a close up for this, so that everyone can be in pain. So that leaves me with this piece. So this one was surprisingly even. So I'm guessing my waistband is going to be, well, that's 7.5. 4 minus 1, it's going to be 3 centimeters wide, and then whatever's left in this strip is going to be the armpit square, placket, and cuffs. I don't have enough. Let's use that for the armpit one. That's cuffs. Yeah, I do. And then this is my placket. As you can see by its obvious placket shape.
That was not obvious.
Yeah.
I started by assembling the skirt. It consisted of 3 squares and the sides were offset and sewn together with a simple running stitch. The seam allowances won't fray since it's the selvage, but I chose to fill it down for added strength. The top and bottom of the skirt were folded over twice and hemmed with a cat stitch. I made a waistband by cutting a strip of twill tape and covering it with the linen fabric. It was closed with a whip stitch. I thought I would have enough fabric in the skirt to have it be gathered up all the way around, but it was unlined and very thin, so instead I made it flat in the front and left the ungathered section at the side. That would serve as the closure. With a sturdy thread made for upholstery, I stitched 2 rows of gathering thread around the top of the skirt. Just a tip, these knots will be visible, so tie them on the inside, not on the outside of the skirt like I just did. Once it was all done, I pinned in the waistband, and because I haven't planned out anything, I had to unpick a side seam to make the skirt closure. I then used the same upholstery thread to attach the skirt, being careful to catch each individual pleat. I had completely forgotten about the placket plan and made this part of the skirt fold over to create a hidden closure. I chose the safe and boring method of closing the skirt with hooks and eyes. And there we have it, the skirt's finished. Now on to the bodice. I wanted to make a very simple and boring, vaguely mid-Victorian looking bodice, and I set out without a pattern or any experience doing so. With that in mind, I think I should be grateful it didn't turn out worse. With a base pattern as a guide, I drew some wide shoulders and stitched the pieces together. As you can see, they didn't match very well. Once again, I offset the seam to file down the seam allowances. I did not have a good time using this thread. It would break with the tiniest amount of tension. I didn't look at what sort of thread it was, just that it was a good brand, but it was a loose twist or something. I can't look it up now because I threw it away, but I've definitely learned to look at the ply and twist count from now on. Then I prepared the sleeves. I pinned in a massive gusset, it could have been smaller, and felled the raw edges over with a whip stitch. The remaining sleeve were sewn up similarly to the skirt with the running stitch. Having gathered a substantial bit of this fabric, I already had an idea of how much it would gather down to, so I measured up how much of the sleeve I could gather and started sewing 2 rows of stitches with the good thread. It was gathered up and pinned to the bodice to test the fit, which it didn't, like at all, so I had to let it out a little. So after those adjustments, this is what it looks like. I haven't done the cuff, so it's going to look a bit bat-like, but I'm actually very happy about how it looks. So once this is all gathered up, I'm going to have a massive poofy sleeve, but it's still extremely flexible. I can do whatever I want in this. So very happy about that. So now I'm going to go and finish off the other sleeve. So with those alterations done to the sleeve, this has now left me with the sleeve hole that instead of being 17 times 2 centimeters, it is now 22 centimeters times 2. So it's going to be 44 centimeters around the entire thing to fit in this entire sleeve. And the reason for why it needs to be that is because of this little attachment, because what I didn't realize was that if I add those, what was then 17 centimeters to be my sleeve hole, I can't fit my arm through this little part because I'm not going to fit my arm in here. So that is why I needed to add a few more centimeters, but I think it ended up looking good, and I'm assuming that this is somewhat similar to what would have been done in the past. And now I'm going to offset this gathered up part. The back will have a non-gathered part of about 17 centimeters and the front will be 21. This is to try and get some of the gathering to
be further to the back of the dress, both because this is where I want the volume to be and because, as always, it's the more historically accurate choice. Fabric goes to the back.
Then I moved on to gathering up the sleeve cuffs. I decided to make this entire dress by hand. Why, I will never know, because from beginning to end this project has taken over a year. That's not necessarily because I'm slow, but more that I didn't know what I was doing, so I was procrastinating working on it. The gathering threads were secured by tying them and making a few stitches. I made the cuffs as simple as I could and once again sewed each individual pleat down to make it look more even. One thing that I've learned about linen blends is that linen cotton blends will fray a lot, and linen viscoses will shed, and the fabric will start looking old and worn simply by me handling it while sewing. The blends were half the price of regular linen, so I don't necessarily regret it for a costume, but if this was for a garment that would see a little more use, I wouldn't recommend using it. I stitched the sleeves into the bodice with a back stitch, but I had to go in afterwards and sew it again from the outside because there was so much fabric the stitching wasn't tight enough and became visible. I folded over the seam allowances to hide the raw edges. Remember the cotton blend lining frays a lot and wasn't very giving. For the bulky top of the sleeves, I used scraps to cover the raw edges. With that done, I finally marked the front. It was folded in and stitched together to the lining. I had this mysterious piece of fabric that I couldn't remember what I made for, and I made it into a small collar. This all looks a bit funny, but I was trying to make it so that it would cover up all of the raw edges. And finally, I decided on where to put the darts. This entire bodice has more or less been made backwards, and that's because I have no idea what I'm doing. I also went ahead and unpicked the side seams again because I had to redo them. When I was more or less happy, I folded in the remaining raw edges. Once again, I would like to say that I hate this thread. I decided on some buttons for the closure. I chose these wooden ones. Then I sewed simple buttonholes and attached the buttons. I also added a hook and bar at the very top because I didn't want to sew a buttonhole into the bulkiest part of the bodice. And that's it for this project. I'm not entirely happy about the fit. It looks okay from the front, but the back looks too baggy. Maybe one day I'll fix it. It happened to be cotton grass season when I managed to finish this dress, and because I've grown up with fairy tales about princesses turning cotton grass into wool, I've always wanted to harvest some and see if it can in any way be useful, but that will have to wait for another video. Thank you for following along. Until next time. hiking up the mountain at 5 in the morning. There's 5 degrees out today. I'm wearing a corset and all this because I'm afraid of meeting people.